It's good to look like. Here we go.
Okay.
We're recording.
All right. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Mysteries of Grief, Tools, Techniques, and Rituals. This workshop has been kind of a long time coming, and I'm really pleased to facilitate this workshop and to introduce to you John Hughes Sensei from the Longmont Buddhist Temple, who would have been hosting in person for us, but then we made the decision to go to Zoom because, you know, the virus is still doing its thing. So we wanted to be safer rather than sorry. So I'm really pleased to see you here, and feel free at any time during the Zoom 4 hours that we have together to take care of yourselves and get your tea and your coffee, your comfy blankie, stuff like that. So having said that, I will say, please, John, proceed with your invocation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. As amazing as it is, we are moving backwards on COVID restrictions. Tomorrow's Bodhi Day service will also be virtual only for those of you who might have thought about coming. So we'll be back to my meditation room where for a year I did all of our services. So I think the idea of grief as a subject of investigation of a workshop is incredibly important right now. One of the things that I read recently, and I don't recall who said it, might have been Thich Nhat Hanh, it might not have been, is that grief is the price of love. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. As hard as grief is to deal with in its immediacy, if we didn't love, we wouldn't grieve. And love is one of the real key things for being an awake and aware human being. So if you would please join me in Gassho, hands together, palms together, I guess is the correct translation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. We take refuge in the Buddha of infinite light and life. We take refuge in the infinite power of the universe to take care of our cares and worries so that we can put our attention to being here now and being truly present in the lives of those with whom we interact. That's our job here on this earth. We have a lot going on, as is evidenced by the fact that we're completely virtual again this morning. This morning's paper showed a confirmed case of Omicron virus in Boulder County. The very first funeral that I've been able to conduct in almost 2 years now was just 5 or 6 weeks ago. And as difficult as it is to face our mortality, not being able to do funerals and take care of the grieving is a difficult situation for me as a minister, as well as for the families and friends involved. I would caution everybody to be very gentle with yourselves. Something that I try to tell myself at least a few times a day is don't take yourself so damn seriously. I'm very capable of really thinking I'm important, and that's a mistake. So again, Thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it back to Christina and the presenters.
Thank you, John. Kitty, I'm assuming that you have the great power in that you can mute people and unmute them. Is that correct? No?
I'm not a host anymore.
You're not a host anymore. Okay, so Greg is the person doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. Greg has the great power. All right. So having said that, please make sure that if you are listening only, that you keep yourself muted. And and as John said, take care of yourselves. And part of that is realizing that you're not responsible for anyone else. It's easy if you're a person who is a caretaker or caregiver, and you want to save the world like me, that you will maybe disregard those boundaries of self and other that can be that we want to have that communication, but we need to remember that people have their own way of looking at the world, their own path in this world. And so when someone is sharing something, let them share. And there will be time for us to share with each other. But just remember that advice is not something people need right now unless solicited. So thank you for taking care of yourselves. And I'm speaking a lot to myself because, man, I'm so ready to give the answer because I think I know it. So having said that, I want to bring up my little plan here so I can keep on time. Yeah, so we actually are a little earlier, which is great. We have more time. That means we have a little more wiggle room. So I'll just introduce myself and as the first presenter. I'm Christina Hildebrandt. I'm a body worker, manual therapist here in Longmont, Colorado. I've been practicing for, I can't remember. I count every year. I recount because I can't remember. Getting close to 30 years, but I think it's more like 29. Doing massage therapy and right now a lot of something called visceral manipulation, which is listening to the fascia, the web of fascia in my clients' bodies. And that web reveals restrictions that keep them from moving forward either physically or emotionally. And it's really wonderful work. I really love it. Let's see, I'm a member of the Longmont Buddhist Temple where John presides and have been for, I guess, 10 years. Again, me and numbers. I don't pay attention. And that's been a real help for me. So although this workshop is hosted by the Longmont Buddhist Temple and facilitated by me, a Buddhist, that doesn't mean you have to be a Buddhist to grieve, right? Everybody has grief, just as a human experience. What I offer to this workshop is my background as a body worker. As I talk to people in my human interactions, I realize how incredibly kinesthetically I perceive the world. And that's kind of my metaphor as well for what I see happening around me. I relate everything to body experience, so not surprising. We will be talking a little bit about the different kinds of grief. And this is where I am not an expert. Kitty and Deva, the other two presenters, and I have spoken already together about grief, our experiences, our backgrounds with it. And so each presenter will bring how she perceives things and her expertise into the mix. I wanted to mention too, if you have any questions as a presenter is presenting, the other two presenters will be looking at the chat, and I encourage whoever's not presenting to go ahead and unmute and interrupt the presenter if appropriate, to say, hey, there's a question for you, or, you know, Linda wants to know blah, blah, blah. So that's okay for me anyway, and I ask you to do that. So talking about grief, which is a sense of loss, it often manifests as something that we wouldn't identify as grief. When I think of grief, I think of out and out sobbing and crying. But as I'll tell you in a moment, it actually manifested in other ways for me when my mother died. So there's individual grief, and there's also collective grief. And we'll see, I think we're all experiencing that. We'll talk about that later with the other presenters a little bit more. So these other emotions that can come up, either individually or collectively, we can see anxiety, a sense of insecurity. We can see depression, for sure. And of course, there are degrees in all of these emotions. You can feel a little off and not really know what's going on. You can feel, clinical depression, which is quite different, and different. There are different degrees of feeling disabled by these emotions. So when we're happy and we feel secure, we have enough food to eat, and we are free to move around without fear. You remember that? That gives us a sense of freedom, and our creativity can swell and express itself, and all sorts of wonderful things happen, and our interactions with our neighbors can be whole and gratifying. However, when we have this background of constant fear, and I think you'd probably agree with me that that's what we are all experiencing all over the planet. There are folks who say, well, the virus isn't real, or I'm going to ignore it, or whatever. However, I think a huge majority of people are experiencing fear. And of course, we have these things that happen in society that we read about in the newspaper and we see on the news, and maybe we just feel. You know what I'm talking about. I don't really want to dwell on that. But these things cause us grief. They really do. Makes me cry just thinking about it. And so what I'm going to present to you is the idea that when we have these emotions, what we tend to do is want to get away from them. We want to not experience that negativity, we would call it, that discomfort. You're in your body. You have nowhere else to go unless you decide, to not be in your body anymore in some form. And in my bodywork practice, I see how people will disassociate from different parts of their bodies. That part of the body is storing that emotion that they don't want to experience. Just out of curiosity, I'm interested in, let me get my view correct here. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm getting a text or a phone call from a participant, so I'm going to tell her to text me. All right, so anyway, how many people here have experienced this feeling of some something that's just doesn't feel right, and it's a body feeling. And are you able to identify the actual part of the body? I see David nodding. I see Kitty nodding. Yeah, so sometimes those things that lodge in your body, you can identify. You say, oh my gosh, my right hip is really sore today. I wonder why. Sometimes it's because you've been sitting on your hip wrong, or there's some physical thing that even a blow, you fell down. I mean, that's obvious. But sometimes your hip is hurting and you don't know why. I think it's important to look at your environment, look at your emotional life at that time and say, oh, I remember my hip was really hurting when my mother died, which is the case for me. And so then if that's the case, then can I look at what's going on in my life and say, am I feeling that grief? It might be grief for my mother, but it might be grief for what's going on in society around me or in my personal life, and something that I hadn't really consciously thought about. So when we have these emotions, whether it's a anxiety or depression or anger, it's important to name it. And the reason I say that is because when you name something, you bring it to the conscious mind. When it's just floating around in your subconscious, it's trying to get your attention. It's saying, the right hip, we're going to really signal the presence of anger in the right hip. That's how the body works. Or with dreams or whatever, the subconscious tries to get a hold of the conscious mind and say, hey, I need some attention here. Because if you don't give it attention, if you don't see it and you don't listen to it, then it will continue to knock at your door in a somatic way, in a body way. So I'll tell the little story of my mother's death and how that manifested for me. My mom died in 2017. She was 80. I had 3 years to come to terms with that, more or less, because she was told by her doctors, after her heart and her lungs just kind of went, she had this event, and a strong family history of heart disease. So once she kind of blew up inside, the doctors took a look at those images and they said, oh, Harriet, you've got about 3 months, maybe 8. And it was so interesting to see her process. She was a very strong woman. She spent a couple days like this, hunched over. I remember trying to pull her head up, but she was just so depressed by the fact that she had very little time. And then she said later to me, she felt something click inside, something shift. And she brought her head up and she said, I want a physical therapist. I want to be able to get down the stairs. I want to go in my kitchen and cook. And so she did. So it took her a while, but she got to kind of an almost normal state of being with her oxygen. It was really interesting. And then, of course, her body, did what she asked it to do as long as it could. And then it said, Harriet, I can't do this anymore. And then she had to, come to terms with dying. But it was 3 years later. So during that process, I noticed my process of loss. It was, kind of organic because we had so much time. Sometimes I felt sad, obviously. Sometimes I felt gratitude because she was still with us, even though she was not supposed to be. I felt anger at her for spending so much of her life in a way that I thought was just like, not with it, you know, not with it spiritually, because she was very, very stubborn. I felt a lot of things. And at one point, my pelvis, my hips hurt a lot. And looking back on it, it wasn't like a kind of, I received a blow to the pelvis. It was more this from the inside out, this discomfort that was extreme. And I, just didn't want to be in my body because it was so intense. I went to Body Workers. There was a health fair at the time where you can do a taste of therapy. And I remember just hopping back and, hopping from one to the other, saying, I'm in pain, help me. And at some point, somebody said, hey, Christina, you tell me that your mother is sick and she's dying, and don't you think that might have something to do with it? And I said, oh. And once that person was able to bring my pain to my conscious mind, that pain in my hips eased a bit. And because I was able to see it, I was able to name it. And I said, I don't know if I said in the moment, this is grief, but just knowing that this was connected to Mom's dying process really helped ease that pain. And that is a phenomenon that I see in my bodywork practice a lot. I see it in my personal life. If I'm able to name the emotion and see it, sit with it like it's in the room with me, which is an actual technique you can do. You bring your emotion into the room with you. You give it a chair. It's a Gestalt Method. And then you can do this interchange with it. The idea is to hear the message of this emotion. And something that I'm going to suggest to you is a dialogue with that emotion. You can do the Gestalt thing where you're in the chair and then you switch back and forth and you embody both yourself in that chair and your grief in that chair. And you speak for the grief and you speak for yourself. I think that's a thing to do. It's, I think, kind of intense, but your job, if you want to, or your mission, if you want to call it that, is to realize what your language is, what your communication preference is. And so throughout this workshop, we're going to be presenting to you up in the brain, up in the mind kind of ways. Not that the mind is up here, but verbal ways, writing. We're also going to present physical ways to move through, to see your grief and to move through it, and also energetic ways. So the practice that I will share with you now, I call, it's not my idea, but I call it non-dominant hand journaling. I learned it from somebody a long time ago and has been very helpful for me. So the idea is that I'm a right-handed person. This is my dominant hand. This dominant hand then is connected to the conscious mind. It's, it writes easily. It's connected to the physicality of your body. And the non-dominant hand, in my case, the left hand, is connected to your subconscious experience. And in this exercise, you will find it is frustrating because I'm going to ask you to write with your left hand. So I'm looking at the time here, just want to keep on track. So the practice consists of being aware first that there is something going on. And I want to share with you an actual, I wonder if I actually put this down someplace else. I think it's right here. I will share with you this dialogue that I had. Yes, there it is. Had with my body. So first you do need to be aware that there's something going on. You know, that hip pain that I had. Or in this case, I dialogued with my body around an issue that I felt in the form of a wall. So protection makes sense, right? You don't want to experience something, you wall it off. You say, I can't hear you. I can't see you. And that works up to a point until it doesn't work anymore. And then you're going to get body sensations or a feeling of anxiety, shaking, etc. So in this case, I felt that wall and I thought, this feels like it's right here. Sorry about my doggy, if you can hear him. He's an old dog. So I had this wall that I had put up around my heart, and my heart almost felt like it hurt. There's this heaviness. Hold on, please. No, looks like they're going to go around. Okay. Anyway, so for me at that point, I said, okay, hello, my heart. You greet that emotion first. And I wrote down with my right hand, my dominant hand, my dear heart, what do you feel right now? You ask an open-ended question. If you ask a question like, why are you bothering me? Or something like that, then that is not helpful. You ask that open-ended question. So in my case, I wrote down with my dominant hand, what do you feel right now? And I wrote the response. Hi.
Carrie wanted it live.
Yeah, I'm presenting right now. So, but have a seat if you will.
I don't want to be on camera.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. So you ask that open-ended question. You write the question with your right hand. In my case, my dominant hand, non-dominant, writes the response. So the response that my heart gave me was, in response to what do you feel right now? My heart wrote longing to belong. Longing to belong. And then I wrote with my right hand the response to that. Where do you feel you don't belong? The heart responded, to you. How do you not belong to me? My heart said, I'm not accepted by you, not part of you. And at that point, I felt sad because this integral part of myself felt walled off from me. So I wrote, but I love you. And my heart said, do you really? You have to love and accept me first before healing can be done around this issue. I wrote, how should I love and accept you more and better? So at this point, I could have said, but I do love you and I do accept you. But the point was that my subconscious mind was saying, no, you don't. And that can be very difficult. This bubbling up of the subconscious, if you give yourself permission to write the response with your non-dominant hand and access that subconscious information, the information can be uncomfortable. So, warning. However, the end result is good if you're listening. How should I love and accept you more and better? I said. My heart responded, Live your life with passion, verve, and joy. Act from me, your heart. Be spontaneous. Do the things you love to do. Love the things you're doing. And talk to me and with me. Check in every day so I feel seen, accepted, loved, and wanted. And that was the message. I responded and said, thank you for telling me how to be with you and embrace you as part of me. So when we hear things we don't like to hear, whether it's from another person or from a part of ourselves, learning to breathe and give it a moment is really important. You've all experienced, either through your own experience or that of another person, that kind of lashing out and defensiveness that can occur when we come face to face with difficult information. And that's what we're seeing, I think, in society. I don't want to think there's a virus. Don't tell me to wear a mask. So what I want to say to all those people is, come inside yourself. Come inside your own mind. Breathe. What are you feeling? Name the feeling. Give yourself permission to receive the information from that feeling. It's not a bunch of woo-woo. It is a real path, a real exercise that is important and would be wonderful if the entire world would do something like this. So at this point, I want to get back onto the Zoom thing here. I want to open up for questions before I present a few more things. Yeah, anybody need to ask or say something?
Hey, Christina.
Yes.
So when you were dialoguing with your heart, were you switching hands? Were you writing with your right hand for yourself, and then you would switch to your left hand for your heart?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just one.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a pain because my handwriting, in the handwriting of the non-dominant hand is pretty crappy. However, it's like a child. You know, you speak to a child and you say, honey, what's wrong? And the child says, I want this, and you want that, and then one fair, and I didn't like it. You might, on some level, have to kind of, you're already translating because this is all you. So the handwriting might be a little tough to deal with, but that inner child is coming out. And yes, thank you, Kitty, for pointing that out. You are switching back and forth. At one point, years ago, when I was really doing this practice a lot, the information came so quickly to me. I didn't have time to write, the painful writing of the left hand. So I got on the computer and I just kind of said, okay, here I am. I'm in my subconscious, and I channeled myself. And it was really cool because at the time I was kind of freshly out of massage school. I don't remember what the issue was I was dealing with. I was dealing with a lot of issues because massage school brings up a lot of issues. I was on the computer channeling myself, and the subconscious mind says, look on page 158 in the health book. And I went back and forth with my mind, and I said, what do you mean? What health book? And finally I figured out that my subconscious was referring to a health. Can you guys take that conversation, Paul, somewhere else? Paul, can you guys take that somewhere else? for just a moment? Can you go outside? Thank you. So my subconscious mind said, you know, that health book that you had in massage school, basically, I figured it out. It was not clear. I kind of racked my brain. I found the health book. It was for a class I didn't like. I thought, this is really stupid. But I looked on page 158. My subconscious mind had said something about I think it said you are fractionated, which is a weird word. And on page 158, there was a discussion about whole foods, and there was a word, I don't think it was fractionated, but it was like foods that, you know, were chopped up and they didn't have all of their synergistic components in them. And there was a word that had fraction in it, in italics, on page 158. So I looked at that, and what I got from that was that I realized on a subconscious level that I was not being whole, that maybe I was scattered. So anyway, I opened it up for questions, and then I took it over. So anybody have any questions? Yes, Connie? Oh, you're muted, dear. There we go. Thank you.
All right. It's Corinne.
Oh, sorry. I have bad eyesight. Close up. Corinne, thank you.
So where would you start for someone that's like, I identified a lot with that sort of detached feeling, but I wouldn't know where to begin because that's sort of where I'm stuck. Would you suggest talking to your heart, or like if there's tension in your jaw, would you just talk
to your jaw, right? Yeah, so if it's a kind of diffuse feeling, you can direct it to your inner child. In my experience, my inner child, man, she's got things to say. And if inner child as a phrase doesn't work for you, you can just say my inner self, or you can say the divine speaking through me. What do you have to say? You can channel Mark Twain. If Mark Twain is your favorite guy and you think that he would have something to help you with in your body, you can use Mark Twain, because it's really just you.
Cool. That was one of my thoughts, was like, maybe that would work with your inner child. So that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or things you want to share?
Nora has a question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't see everybody. I got to get the chat. Thank you, Deva. Nora.
Hi, everyone. For many years, I didn't understand any emotions. And I think that's very typical of people who have a tendency to take care of others. We don't look inside. Our antenna is out for others. So I have an emotional awareness circle. And it's over my desk at my work, and it's over my desk here at home. And if I fold it in half, and this is on the web, it's a feeling wheel. If I fold it in half, there's high emotions and low emotions. And when I discovered in an emotional mastery weekend that emotions are very normal and not to stuff them away, it was like I just got out of jail. So naming the emotion that Christina talks about is just vital for me, because actually looking at the circle, looking at the wheel and finding out, how am I feeling? Because I haven't looked inside for feelings very often because I didn't think they were okay. Other people could have them and I could take care of them and I could help them. But for myself, so here's one: sleepy. I'm sleepy. So am I tired? And is it related to being sad, mad, or scared? it helps me go inside in a very thoughtful way and loving way to that inner child saying, honey, how are you feeling? I don't think I was asked that when I was a child. And so it's my chance to do it now as my own parent. It's okay. It's okay. It's a natural feeling to feel sleepy, tired. And it might be related to you feeling very sad and you just want to hide. And I do. I want to hide in my bed after my son passed. It's been a year and a half, and it's been really hard. But to recognize it and to say it's okay and feel it fully for, I think it's 90 seconds. Pema Chodron talks about if you can feel your feeling for 90 full seconds, your body says, okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me feel. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Nora. That was lovely. Yeah, Nora has experienced that naming that feeling is really important. And 90 seconds can be like an eternity. And it's kind of, I liken it to when you have the flu and you got that feeling that you got to throw up. Oh, you hate that feeling. And some people will suppress it and they'll do everything they can to not, get rid of the thing that their body's trying to get rid of. And yet when you do that, you feel better. And your body needs to express itself. So, any more questions I think we can take one more, and then I want to show you a couple of physical techniques that I use. Anybody? Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do then is bring up the vagus nerve, and I'm sure other people are going to be talking about the vagus nerve. And why do we talk about the vagus nerve? It's because the vagus nerve is a nerve, it's called the wanderer, because it goes all over your body. It starts up here in the brain, in the corpus callosum, I think. It comes, there are two, one on each side, comes down on either side of your trachea here, pretty close. Here, and then it wraps, the right one wraps and the left one wraps, and they form this kind of net around your esophagus. And then I don't know if you can see, right here at the solar plexus, the vagus nerve comes down into the abdomen and innervates almost all of your organs. So why is vagus nerve important? Because it is the parasympathetic nerve, a parasympathetic nerve, the major one. And parasympathetic nerves, their job is to calm down the body. Sympathetic means getting all riled up, and parasympathetic means like paramedic. It's calming, it's healing, it's taking care of the emotional body. So one way we can help ourselves calm down physically, because sometimes your physicalness is so up, your nervous system is so upregulated that you words don't work. Saying, okay, it's all right, it's okay. It doesn't work. So getting physical with your body will help, because it's a physical thing. So everybody try this. I'm going to go back to the Zoom thing. Let's just trace the path of the vagus nerve. You can start up here. I usually don't, just because I can't kind of wrap my mind around the vagus nerve corpus callosum. Where is it? I get anatomical, so we don't want to do that. We just say, hello, vagus nerve. And come down somehow, on your head or your face. Just think vagus nerve. I wish I didn't have a fly in here. Oh well. Come on either side of your trachea, of your neck, and maybe a few times. I can already feel tingling in my body, awareness of my legs. and then come down just onto the sternum and think about that vagus nerve wrapping around your esophagus, or just think about the nerve traveling down. Take this thing off. It's in the way of my vagus nerve. Come down into the solar plexus and then into the belly. And do it a few times. It's slow. As you do it, breathe all the way down into the belly. If you're feeling tingling, or you get kind of cold, or you have any kind of shaky sensation, those are good indications that you're connecting to that part of the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. Once you get down into the abdomen, go ahead and press. So what I'm doing, let's see if I can see myself as you see. Where is Christina? There she is. Okay. So once you get down into the abdomen, you've come down here. Here's your lovely abdomen. Thank you, vagus nerve. And I'm just basically pressing. Now, I'm a visceral manipulation therapist. I know about all those organs, but you don't have to know about the organs. You don't have to think of yourself, well, the small intestine is, here and the pancreas is there. Don't worry about that. What you do want to think about is, here is vagus nerve. And John will tell you that part of the Shin Buddhist practice, which is the Longmont Buddhist Temple's particular Buddhist practice, the Shin Buddhist practice emphasizes gratitude hugely. With any of these physical techniques, if you add a dose of gratitude, it's really powerful because it's taking you out of that judgmental mind. When we have gratitude, then you're lighting up different parts of your brain, the ones you want to have lit up. You have a better sense of community and connectedness, and also a connectedness with yourself, with your own body, your own experience. So, in addition to the lovely vagus nerve, what we can do is we can add not only gratitude, but we can also add breath. When you breathe up here, that's the breath you use when there's a saber-toothed tiger after you. Or if you're not living in that time period, just a plain tiger, or the tiger of your mind. So we use the scalene muscles. They connect to the dome of the lungs, and we do that kind of hyperventilating and shallow breathing. When we want to deepen the breath and deepen the experience and come into the body and access some of those emotions, flies. Hello. Belly breathing is the most important thing. So belly breathing, I'm sure you've heard of that as a term. It's kind of a general term. There are wonderful belly breathing exercises on YouTube. If you just plug that in, you're going to find a lot of different exercises. My favorite body scan is by John Kabat-Zinn. He's in my resource list. So belly breathing simply means that you put one hand on your belly, preferably, one hand on your chest. And when you breathe, inflate your belly first. You might start by just normal breathing and see what part of your body inflates first. I tend to inflate my chest first. But as a baby, you probably didn't do that, because babies are born with this natural, unless I think they have nervous system issues, a natural belly breathing. So see what happens. And if you want to lie down, this is a great time to do it. You can even put a book, not a really, really heavy book, but a book or something, a stuffed animal if you want, on top of your chest and one on your belly. So exhale, and then inhale with your belly. Then your chest. And then on the exhale, lower the chest, lower the belly. Let's just do that a few times. Inhale on the belly and the chest, and then lower the chest, lower the belly. Belly up first, chest and side ribs. Lower the chest and the belly. So I have a YouTube video that I created a while ago. It's on my YouTube channel. If you just search for Christina Hildebrandt. I think there are two of us in the world. There's a nice Swiss lady named Christina Hildebrandt, and she lives in Switzerland. And you can check out her YouTube channel. I never have, but you'll see my picture and click on that and you'll find all the different things that I offer in sound healing, and this YouTube channel, the video that I made that tells you how to belly breathe. And you can also find it, I'm sure, all over the internet, because people need to do that. So that you can combine your belly breathing with your gratitude, with your vagus nerve stroking. Let's see, what else do I want to say? Okay, so the thing that I'd like to mention is, before we go into sound healing as a kind of energetic practice, one thing that I found really helpful in calming my mind and my body is knowing where I am in space. What am I doing right now? So this is called mindfulness. I'm sure we've all heard of mindfulness. Mindfulness is simply knowing what you're doing while you're doing it. The Buddha spoke of it 2,600 years ago. In fact, that was a real big thing for him. When people said, "Oh, Buddha, tell me, am I going to be born as an animal, or am I going to be born as a god, or am I going to be a human again?" Or, philosophy this and philosophy that. He said, that stuff doesn't matter. What are you doing right now? So for our purposes as 21st century people, it's the same idea, minus the monastic setting, perhaps. But in that YouTube video I mentioned, I go over mindfulness as well in meditation, very, very briefly. So meditation is like really a mindfulness practice. So in meditation, we watch our thoughts, and that can be very helpful. I did a fun exercise just for myself many years ago. I sat in meditation, I watched my thoughts, and I labeled them. I said, what's at the base of this thought? So maybe a thought was, oh God, I wonder what Kitty thinks of me right now. Oh, geez. Fear. That's a fear thought. Maybe I thought, what am I going to make for dinner? I don't know what I'm going to make, and Sarah's not going to like what I make anyway. Fear. I wonder what that dream meant. That dream was trying to tell me something, but I don't know what it is. That's insecurity. Most of the thoughts boiled down to fear, which was interesting to me. So feel free to do that kind of exercise. It's very illuminating. But here we're talking about too, not just thoughts, but where are my hands? I can just hold them in space and be aware of them. And when I'm aware of them, I'm aware of my heart. I'm aware of my solar plexus. If I get up, I'm aware of placing my feet on the floor. In order to get up, to walk around, I have my hand on my ball. I notice, what do my legs feel like? What do my feet feel like on the floor? You know, body and space. So one thing about nerves is that if your nervous system is not working well, there will be a part of your nervous system that doesn't tell you where you are in space. Part of the nervous system, its purpose is so you know where you are, so that you can run away from the saber-toothed tiger and jump over the bushes because you can see the bushes. Your leg knows how to get over the bushes. And being mindful of thoughts and body in space means I know what I did with my phone because I was aware. Let me check. Delyn. Oh, David, you just sent me an email.
Oh gosh, I sent it to Delyn. I thought she went to the temple. I'll try sending it again. She needs the link. I'll send it.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any questions about nervous system stuff and mindfulness before we get into the idea of sound healing and what we can do with our own voices and singing bowls or found objects? Anybody have a thing they want to say or ask? Oh, there's Delyn. I see Delyn. Hi, Delyn. Was that pretty clear? I hope it was. So I'm trying to allow myself space with you. And so when I ask, are there any questions? We can sit with it for just a minute. And then if there are questions later on, when someone's talking, put it in the chat. So I will just check my notes and make sure I'm not missing anything. Another thing that space and quiet does is it allows us to come back to this moment. It allows us to be in our bodies. So when you're in an argument with somebody, if you ever do that, it's okay to say, I need a timeout. It's okay to say, I need a minute. So that you can listen in to that small, still voice that says, I don't feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, you can say, okay, I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of that part of me that does not feel safe. What do I need to do? Maybe I need to set a boundary. Maybe I need to say, I'm going to go into my room. I need 15 minutes. You can say this to a child. It might work. Or to your spouse or to your friend. Or to yourself. I need that time, that quiet time. So with the following practice, this is a nerve practice. You wouldn't think so. But when we do humming and singing and vocalizing, we are stimulating that vagus nerve because it runs right next to our trachea. And also, if you put your fingers right here, and since you're on mute, you can do anything you want. You can be an opera singer, or you can just speak. You'll feel that vibration. That's actually kind of a calming thing in itself. With a light touch here, feeling that sound. So that's one of the reasons that that sounding and singing calms you, because it's calming that vagus nerve. It's stimulating the whole calming system of your body. So we're going to do a little bit of humming. We're going to play with vowels and sibilants, which are like, and then we'll end with some singing bowls, and then we'll take a 10-minute break at 10:10. That's about 6 minutes. So you can have that awareness of your vagus nerve, or you can not worry about it. It'll happen. So humming, you don't have to be a singer to hum. In fact, Jonathan Goldman, I think, who is a sound healer in Boulder, says, if you can hum, you can sing, you can make a sound. Sound is actually coming out in a bubble form. It's not a wave like that, it's a bubble. So when you speak and you're creating a sound all around right here. You're vibrating the bones in your face, right, Mr. Fly? So let's sing, or let's hum just a tone. It doesn't have to be the tone I create. It doesn't have to be Mr. Fly's tone. It can be any tone that makes sense for you. So you can have your fingers here, or you can just hum. Let's do that for 3 breaths, okay? So let's inhale together. And when you reach the end of your exhale, you can breathe in. Pick another tone. That one feels good to me. Where do you feel it in your body? So, humming. Humming is great. And what's great about humming is that if you're in a kind of noisy environment, no one can hear you, because there's probably some kind of hum happening already. The hum of conversation, the hum of some machine. When my mom was getting her MRI and I was holding her hand, the machine is very loud and it goes, blah, 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 blah. So I hummed something that was a perfect fifth from that tone, and it helped me in a pretty stressful situation. Mom had James Taylor playing in her earphones, so she didn't care. But for me, the humming really helped. There's also just vowels. Which one do you like? Which one does your body resonate, literally resonate with? Try this in the bathtub. It's really fun. If you siren up and down in the bathtub, you can find the bathtub's resonant frequency. Ooh. And when you hit that resonant frequency, ooh, it gets really loud, because that's the resonant frequency of your bathtub. So your body is a container. Your pancreas is a container, a little container. Your stomach, your throat, your cranium. You have all these little containers within a large container that will resonate on any given day with a different tone. So right now, let me get to...
Christina, I just have to share, I was humming and my dog started howling. There he is, see?
Rough.
And my desk vibrated.
Your desk vibrated, all right. Yeah, animals are really interesting. I had an experience with a little dog. I was playing singing bowls at a center, and they have a little doggy there. He came right up close into my lap, practically between me and the singing bowl. And I was floored because dogs have great hearing, and you'd think that singing bowl would be too much for him. And the people at the center said, "He's protecting us." I thought that was really interesting. So here is a singing bowl. These things are so expensive, but they're great. And so I don't expect everyone to run out and get a singing bowl, but if you do, you'll like it. I meant to go get this garage sale bowl. That was a $10 bowl. It's about this big. It's over in the other place. It's got a great sound. So you don't have to get a singing bowl. You've got your voice, which is free, right? And for you. But here are singing bowls. I have a D, I have an F sharp, and I have another D, which is kind of a different kind of D. So I'm going to start with this guy, and we'll just do this for a couple minutes. This is for you. This is a sound bath for you. It's via Zoom, but I hope you enjoy it. Now, granted, this is not the best sound over Zoom. On my YouTube channel, you can access some singing bowl tracks, which I encourage you to do. It's nicest when you are wearing headphones, and they're there for you. So thank you for listening to me talk about things I like. At this point, we have a 10-minute break. We're actually I actually took up a little bit of that time. So if it's okay with everybody, can you come back at 10:20?
So Christina, I want to point something out real quickly.
Yes, sir.
If you go to a Nepalese store, which there's a variety of either Tibetan or Nepalese stores in Boulder County and parts of Denver and stuff, and buy what in our tradition we call a bell, they call a bowl. Those are tuned, and their holistic native medicine is based on sound vibrations. You probably knew this, but probably a lot of people don't. And if you have a particular chakra that is impacted, you might want to buy a D bowl or an A bowl or something like that.
Yeah, John, you're right. And the whole chakra discussion is very interesting. I would say go with your gut when you're purchasing a bowl. If you're going to buy one online, see if you can Skype with it, literally. You ask the person who's selling it to get on Skype with you and play the bowl for you so you can hear it if you're spending a lot of money. If you're just going into a store, like there's a beautiful one in Lafayette called Tibetan Souvenirs, play the bowls and tune in. What does your body need? That's the best way to pick a bowl. And it might actually hit one of your chakras that John is talking about. Thank you. So we'll see you back at 10:20.
Christina, are you pausing the recording?
I don't know.
You can do that if you go down to the record place and it'll give
I
you.
will do that.
Great, thanks, Kitty. I've been in the healing arts since 1989, first as a psychotherapist and then as a spiritual teacher, then as a spiritual leader. I'm also an ordained mindfulness practitioner in Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage, generation number 44. So I want to talk about several things about grief. I want to share some of my own experiences because it is important to tell your story. It is important to find people with whom you feel safe enough to tell your story. When we grieve, we need to be witnessed. So today, I'm wondering how many of you are actively grieving. I'm wondering if any of you are very new to grieving, that it's just something that's happened. There is a difference. Our mind, our body, perhaps our spirit respond so profoundly, so dramatically to grief. Take whatever serves you from my talk and leave the rest. I hope if you only take one thing, that it is this, that grief is a universal experience, and yet it is experienced uniquely by each person. It is experienced uniquely for each type of grief you have. And grief is not an illness that needs to be cured. Grief is not a problem that needs to be solved. It is a natural response to loss. So there are all kinds of losses. As Christina mentioned, as a planet, we are grieving right now. We have had the experience of so much loss, the loss of safety, and often the loss of connection, especially when we were shut down, pre-vaccination, etc. Many of us were in our home alone. Thank heavens for the technology that we have in order to stay connected. I think it's essential to honor our grief, to be aware of it. It is part of the human experience. It is part of what makes us magnificent creatures. Grief is often very lonely. Even if you are surrounded by people, it's common and normal to feel alone in your experience. And the poet David Whyte captures that loneliness, I think, well in his poem, The Well of Grief. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, the place we cannot breathe. We'll never know the source from which we drink, the source from which we drink, the secret water cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. It's common when we are grieving to wish we weren't. It's so hard. I want to use the word healing to mean the integration of mind, body, and spirit. Healing is not the same as a cure. Another word we use with grief is recovery. It's essential to understand that grief changes us. There is the before and the after. There is a liminal period between who we were and who we will become. That's so hard. So people grieve for all kinds of things. I'm going to focus in particular on the death of a loved one today. However, we also grieve the loss of health. We grieve the loss of a relationship, a marriage, the loss of a job, the loss of a pet, the loss of a planned future. You know for yourself when someone has died, the future changes. We often feel helpless. There are so many feelings that we have. We often experience isolation, and we may need time to ourselves. Christina talked about the central nervous system. When we experience grief, our central nervous system is dysregulated, and that impacts our mind, our body, everything. What is happening during this natural process is that our heart and our mind are trying to integrate new information, a new being. There's a natural process to it, and we can't rush it. What we can do is tend to our grief. You often will hear comments like, "You'll get over your grief." That isn't true. You simply learn to carry your grief. And when it is new, the weight of it may have you crushed upon the floor. And when we tend to our grief, we build up muscles, psychological, emotional, spiritual muscles to carry that grief. And over time, the grief may feel lighter. It has impacted you for your life. So I talked about there are many things for which we grieve. In 2001, I was living in a household with some adolescent teenage boys who were coming in at 2:00 in the morning, playing their music and being very loud. And I kept walking around saying to myself and out loud, I wish I lived in a monastery. I wish it were quiet. And I woke up March 2001, sneezed 3 times, and blew out much of my hearing. So I grieved that loss, and that loss still impacts me. It is not so burning. It is not so hard, yet it changed me. I was a psychotherapist and suddenly I couldn't hear my clients. So those clients that came to me during that first 2 years before I could get hearing aids were those that were looking for their voice. When we are grieving, we need to find our own voice. That voice will be different than anyone we have used before. And we need to find an audience for that voice. When grief is very new and very raw, that may not be possible. The most important thing throughout this process, as John said earlier, is to be kind to yourself, to be gentle with yourself. You've never been in that moment, in this moment before. If there's any way, if it's at all possible to adopt beginner's mind, to be open and curious about who you are and who you will be, that is helpful. So as we talk now, I'd like to invite us to do a couple of simple practices as we move forward. And one you can do anywhere and anytime is simply placing your hand on your heart. So notice the warmth of your hand on your heart. And I'm imagining this impacts the vagus nerve. And as you place your hand on your heart, just breathe, just normally. You can practice this anywhere at any time. So what are the effects of grief? Again, they are unique to each and every person. So those I'm going to speak about are very common. There is a model with 5 stages of grief developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she and others extrapolated it from the original research to all of grief. And that is not accurate. Do not be limited by that 5 stages of grief. She interviewed people who were dying as to what they experienced, and then took that and used it in grief. So we may experience denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, or none of those, or just some of those. What is common in the body is exhaustion, total exhaustion and heaviness. It's common to impact our sleep, our eating, our personal hygiene, our health, our relationships. Emotions can be tumultuous, and it's good to remember that emotion means energy in motion. Christina talked about our natural desire to suppress or move away from these feelings. That delays the healing process. And it's human, so be kind when you notice that. We can feel rage, we can feel helplessness, hopelessness, sorrow, sadness. Anxiety is very common. The body keeps a record. The body keeps a record of the experience and even of the date, the day of the week, the time. So even 3 years later, if you're not thinking about your grief, you may feel awry one day and then recognize, oh, this is the anniversary of the loss of my loved one. Oh, this is that person's birthday. Physiologically, grief affects our respiration, our heart rate, and our complete nervous system. Mona Lisa Schultz wrote a book called Awakening Intuition, She's a neurologist, and she spoke of especially someone close to you that you have lain with. When they die, your body goes through the loss of the exchange of molecules. So there is deep physical pain. You may have, as Christina mentioned, odd pains and sensations as a way of your body speaking to you. Your appetite, your weight, your digestion, your muscles, your blood pressure are affected. You could have heart palpitations. You could have vision issues and dizziness. All of these can be concerning in the moment, and they are a natural response. Because your central nervous system has been dysregulated, you may experience fight, flight, freeze. That is what our body does to danger. And grief can feel like danger. There has been a loss of safety. There has been a loss of the known. One of the things we can do with anxiety is to take a breath and say, in this moment, right here, right now, I am safe. We may need to do that thousands of times. June 21st, 2008, I was in my home doing a watercolor, and I got a phone call from a hospital in California asking me if I was Karen's next of kin. My first thought was, that woman has broken her leg. She had gone on a vision quest. It was a 10-day vision quest. She was with 15 other women, 2 shamans leading it. This was the 3rd day, where each person was to go out on her own to a place she'd already picked and prepared and spend 3 days alone. And I learned from the shaman that Karen woke up. She stood up. She said, I can't breathe. And she fell to the ground. She suffered, I hope, only a couple of minutes. And these 15 women gathered around her, one doing CPR, which would not, of course, work. But they sang to her. They held her. I had to make 200 calls. I had to call her father, her brother. She was a minister of a Presbyterian church. I had to call the church. I had to call our shared close friends and got some of them to make other calls. But before I could even make that first call, I went out onto my back deck and an animal howl came out. And throughout that day, I had to fight vomiting. This is what my body did. Know that your body may do its own unique grief. So making those calls and making preparations for funeral, there was a to-do list, and I went into some kind of automatic action thing. And my goal at that point was to stay present to every moment. That is the only time in my life with an acute grief that I was able to do that. A friend came to me, everyone gathered at our home that day and that night. And he came to me and he kept saying, here, have a whiskey. I kept saying, no, thank you. I want to stay here. I want to stay present. That is so hard to do, stay present. And yet when you think about it, what better way to honor that person but to stay present? So in this moment, let us do what is called calm and collect breathing. And that is that we will take an inhale to the count of 4, and I'll count. We will hold it to the count of 4, and we will exhale to the count of 7. And we know that a longer exhalation impacts the vagus nerve. So together, inhaling to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now do that on your own. This calm and collect breathing helps to reset the nervous system. It reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. So the mind responds, the brain responds. We may rehash what happened over and over again. We may rehash how we learned of this death over and over again. We may question what we might have done differently. Doubt ourselves, our self-worth may even be reduced, judge ourselves or judge others, including the deceased. Brain fog is very common. Often there's some memory loss, short attention span, sense of overwhelm, losing a track of time, confusing the days, having difficulty reading, hard to follow a discussion, challenges with finances. We may imagine horrible future events because our life has been changed. We may misplace items or put them in strange places. We forget names. We have to learn how to catch ourselves and stop, pause, take a breath, and if possible, redirect those thoughts and be kind with ourselves. It is important to understand that our mind and our body are trying to integrate the new. It will do that. Our minds and our bodies are made to do that. The length of time is unique to each of us. There's a cultural belief that can impact how we think we're doing. And that cultural belief is that our thoughts create reality. It's simply not true. Our thoughts impact how we respond to reality. Our thoughts impact how we perceive reality. So when you're having distorted thoughts, be kind and gentle and say, this is natural. This is what my brain is doing. This is what my mind is doing right now. In this moment, right here and right now, I am safe. I would like to take a moment now for another practice, and that's called the butterfly hug. And you place one hand on one shoulder, the other hand on the other shoulder, so your arms are crossed, and very gently tap. Find your own rhythm. And remember to breathe. Again, you can do this most anywhere except probably driving. So with every loss, what is common is our identity changes. Certain things that are internal that tell us who we are may be gone, may be inaccessible. Our boundaries with others may change because our tolerance for certain things may lessen. It's important to remember that is normal. There is a period of time during grief that we're undefined, that we're going through transition, and we will be transfigured. We find a way to live with what was, with what is, and with what will be. There is a lot of letting go. So I invite us to do another practice of taking your hands and brushing them off gently and thinking about being aware of what it is you want to let go of. And then you can shake it off. When animals experience deep fear, what do? They shake and they piss. There is a need to let go, to let the body be washed. Drink lots of water. You may not even feel like lifting that glass. Drink lots of water. We are animals. Relationships can change. This is another hard part, another sense of loss. There will be some people that can be with you, that can be with you in silence, that can witness you, that don't ask over and over again, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Because at the beginning of grief, you don't even know. You don't know what you need. But there are certain loved ones that know you so well, they can come and sit with you. They can do your dishes. They can change your bedclothes. They can remind you, you might feel better if you take a shower after 3 days of not doing so. Those are the people that you will keep. In our culture, we don't know well how to respond to people grieving. And you will often hear things that are not helpful, like, there's a reason for everything. What the heck? Or you'll get over this. No, you don't. You just learn to carry it. This too shall pass. If we're able, we might feel compassion for that person who's saying what is not useful, but we might not be able to. So it's not uncommon that relationships change and that some folks may go out of your life, or you may push some folks out of your life. This is part of the process. June 7th, 1974, my son Joshua was born 2 months early. He was unable to breathe on his own. He was placed in NICU in the hospital in Fairfax, Virginia. Within hours, he was airlifted to the DC Hospital for Children. My husband at the time, Joshua's father, and I had to consider a very difficult question. Do we take him off life support? We were being informed that because of the amount of oxygen that he needed, his brain was being fried. We made a decision in the middle of the night, the third night, that we would take him off. As soon as we made that decision, there was a phone call from the hospital, and Joshua had just passed. When someone dies, the relationship does not end. We still relate to that person. We still relate to their spirit, to their heart. So Joshua has always been a member of our family. My children, the one, my daughter born before and my daughter born after, knew of Joshua. That burden of grief is much lighter now. And I feel so honored to have known him, even briefly. I still lament a couple of days ago not having a photo. We didn't have cell phones with cameras where everything was recorded and saved for posterity. I still lament not ever being able to hold him. And I am willing to carry that. So there's another practice. This is one of my very favorites from neuro-linguistic programming that I would like to share with you. And that is to take both your arms and hold them out in front of you. And then take your right arm and cross over your left wrist. Clasp your fingers together. And then roll your arms so that your hands rest on your heart. And relax into that and take a breath. And when you do this practice, you may do it as long as it serves you, whether that's for one breath or 20. And when you feel done with it, don't unclasp your hands here. Instead, straighten out your arms, unclasp your hands, and bring them back down. That one's so useful. Let us do it again. Hands out, arms out, right hand over left, clasp fingers, fold arms. One of the beauties of this practice is it is engaging both hemispheres of your brain. And your pressure point right at your chest that is soothing is touched. And again, straighten out, unclasp. Someone mentioned knowing how to take care of others. When we're grieving, we have to put ourselves first. We absolutely have to do that. We have to take care of ourselves. Especially early on, there may be very little energy to do any practices, to think well. If nothing else, be kind and put yourself first. Be patient with yourself. And if you find yourself for just a moment laughing or having a sense of happiness, know that is not betrayal of your lost one. That's your life force. There are so many practices and skills we can develop. One of those is to recognize that as human beings, we are creative beings. We are meant to express ourselves in many ways. And we've looked at that a little bit with the toning, with the humming. There is a practice of writing a story with your grief as a character. You may learn what your character grief needs, what it's like, If that serves you, use that. Another one is to make collages, to take magazines and cut out pictures, just intuitively cut them out. Don't think about which one serves you. And then intuitively put those images together on a piece of paper and stand back and be curious. What is that telling you? Our intuition is within our body. We all have it. Let it serve us, especially during our grief. Find creative outlets: painting, knitting, quilting, woodworking, singing, movement. Again, there may be periods where we're so exhausted we don't think we can move, but simply to stand up and stretch, or if you have a Tai Chi practice or yoga practice, rest into it. Find what makes you feel better and do it. Again, sleep may be deeply impacted. You may sleep all the time, or you may have insomnia. With any of these effects of grief, it is helpful to simply notice it, to not judge it, to learn more about yourself. Simply notice. Things get different. Again, this is a natural process, so things get different. Find small things that make you feel in control, because with this death, you weren't in control, right? So that is such a huge loss. So find something that helps you feel in control. Make a meal, tie your shoes, walk out the front door, close the front door. Pay attention to what your body and mind are telling you that you need. And if anybody says, you don't need that, I got this. I know what I need. Or I don't know what I need right now, and that's just what it is. I've got this. Because you do. We do. We've got it. One of the things that helps us in the witnessing is if somebody says, I see you. I see how hard this is. For a little nanosecond, we're not so lonely. We have companionship for that little bit of time. And that helps save us. We have a human need to belong, to be a part of something larger, a family, a community. So let us pray that those that can attend with us to our grief will be with us. In this moment of silence, I am aware that so much can be said and so little can be said about grief. So I invite each of us to take a breath, be in our body, be aware, be gentle. I believe we have 10 minutes for comments or questions. This is one of my mindfulness bells. And John may know the Sanskrit word. The Sanskrit word means just enough. Regardless of where we are in our grieving, we do have just enough. And so it is.
Thank you, Deva. I was really touched by your stories. I didn't know any of that about you. And you're right that, well, this too shall pass, not really. It's more like it's always there. And it becomes part of who you are. It forms you as a human being and guides you in how you choose to express that experience in the world in a positive way. So thank you for being who you are. And I'm glad that you were able to take those losses and make them into a positive impact on the world.
Anyone else? Someone chatted, thank you, everyone. Please forgive me not joining on screen at this time. Of course, do what you need to do.
I believe Carol had a question.
Thank you. Yes, Carol.
It's not really a question. I was just going to share experiences that I've had as a result of grief, listing a lot of different ways that people might react. And after my husband died, I didn't want to be in my house. I wanted to be even in a supermarket, just anywhere that was not there. Library, anywhere. So going to work was really important for me. And looking back on it, after a couple of years, I thought, well, maybe I wasn't the most effective teacher at that time because of my grief, but being there with my students was what really helped me. And then after a while, things changed. And I didn't want to leave the house. I only wanted to be alone and figuratively pull the covers over my head. Just is, as you said, everyone's experience is unique. And I had had a serious loss before. My father died when I was 15, and my grandparents had died in between. But my experience of after my husband died was, I guess I was just more tuned in. I was more aware of how I felt and how my body was and so on than I had been in previous occasions. And so then when I've experienced other losses, I've been kind of able to watch out for myself in a way, to feel, to sort of notice, well, is this happening? And I know why it's happening, because of grief. Not be taken aback by it or dismayed, but just acknowledging.
That's so important, acknowledging. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that.
I'm finding that because we've kind of created this container for the idea of grief, that there's a kind of bittersweet quality to holding the space. And Deva, you talked about unhelpful things to say to somebody. Not everybody is familiar with or comfortable with quiet, either the person you want to comfort or maybe yourself. So as a person who wants to help somebody who's grieving, what would you suggest in addition to just holding that space for them in quietude, which is not always easy? What would you suggest that we say, do for a person who's grieving?
Some of that depends on how well you know the person. If you know them well, then you may know what has helped them in the past when they've been dysregulated. If you know them well, if you have a fairly intimate relationship with them, just being around, being in that silence without any expectation of that person, just being there. There's an old practice, bring food. Bring food that can be stored in the refrigerator that's available at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's when they have a hunger. Bring a flower. Send a card.
Yeah, I see that John has something, and I wonder if he has a comment on that.
I do have a comment, and thank you, David, so much for your what you presented, because it hits right home. But one of the hardest things for me in becoming a pastor was learning to sit, because I have a lifelong history of being a problem solver. When somebody has a problem, I want to fix it. As you said early on, and I think Christina said something along the same line also, a lot of times people don't want things fixed, they just want you to be present. And to learn to just allow the energy of the universe to come in and sit with whatever is going on is tremendously powerful. And doing pastoral work at a hospice or a funeral home or at a hospital where you're called in for someone that you've never met before and there's a grieving family, all you can offer is just love and peace. So it's so powerful to learn to practice just being present and keeping your mouth shut.
Absolutely. That may be the greatest gift to give. Nora.
I really appreciate everything you said, Deva. I wrote it down. And I'm grateful for times to cry. So grateful because I hold it off. But one of the things that I've noticed that is coming up for me, and it's pretty hard, is that I have been, like John has been there for other people all the time. And I can't be there. I just can't, they want me, they want me, they want me. And I feel ashamed.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's part of what humans feel is shame when they can't do what others want. But the part where you said our friendships may change, I can't be there for some people because they need me so much and there's nothing I can give. I tend to, I've gotten super busy remodeling my son's house after he died, kicking the tenants out that were homeless that had helped him die, that caused his death. Remodeling my house, I find that the busyness helps me to protect myself for the boundary. Oh, I don't have time for you now. I'm so sorry, but one day I might, you know. I don't know how to be honest with them. My cat, sorry.
I think to be honest with the Nora, you go meow.
I had 4 cats here. My sons, mine, my daughters, and
Oh my God.
and another kitten. And yeah, it's really hard to be honest with somebody that needs you to support them. And I've told my friends, I'm just not the same person. This has changed my life forever, and I feel like hiding because I don't want to be that old Nora that took care of people. And there's really not a lot of way I can explain it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deva.
Thank you, Nora, for sharing that and for discovering that that's what you need, is to not be needed and not respond to that. We only have limited amounts of energy when we're grieving, and we need to be mindful of how we are using that. And again, it's a survival process. What's at stake is our survival.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have come to 11:14. So we went over just a little bit, but totally worth it. Thank you to everybody for sharing all the great observations and experiences. So we're going to take a little break. Kitty, you are supposed to start at 11:20. Are you okay starting? Because that's in 5 minutes. Can we eat into your time a little, or do we need to eat into the break?
No, you can do whatever you wish. I'm pretty flexible.
Okay. So I will remind participants that Kitty will be giving us a ritual that requires 3 stones and a vessel of some sort, a vase, a bowl, a Campbell soup mug, maybe. Yeah, so go and prepare that, and let's meet back at, we'll just eat a little into Kitty's time. Let's meet back at 11:22.3. Okay? Thanks for all the chat information that people are sharing. Please check out the chat if you'd like to see what's happening there. And let's bring it to Kitty now. I think she has a lot of wonderful things to share with us.
Maybe.
Hi,
Nora. I haven't seen you in a long time. I'm Kitty Edwards. I'm the executive director of an organization called the Living and Dying Consciously Project, and we offer workshops on living with loss, Walking the Labyrinth of Grief and Conscious Transitions, Living with Dying. But today, in listening to Deva and Christina, I really want to focus on living with loss in our lives when we have to hold it in our lives as we're living. I'm a caregiver. My husband has early stage dementia. So I'm living with loss, the loss of him, the loss of our relationship, the loss how we connect, and it's a constant surprise. And as I began to realize what was happening a couple of years ago, I had to really up my game working with grief because I didn't want grief to surprise me and, make me say something that was inappropriate, or I wanted my grief to be have some space so that I could be really, really present. Now, I'm a shamanic practitioner. So my go-to, I flew to Peru and I worked with Kulandara, and I had her strip out all the grief from me that I had experienced through my life so I could be really clear of the new grief coming in. And what I discovered with that is that grief is stored in the body. That's not a surprise. We all know that. But it's stored in layers. And as we worked on my grief, it came off in layers. First there was the grief for lost loved ones. And then came off the grief for the lost babies, the miscarriages, so that those loss of expectations in your life. But the deeper grief was a grief for myself. This is a grief we don't tap into very often. We feel selfish. We're grieving for ourselves as we go through life. So what I have been developing over the last couple of years, just as a personal practice, is finding ways to give my grief space, finding ways to cry. Nora, I thought your comment was great. You got to give yourself some space. And Deva mentioned that emotions are energy in motion. What I'm going to introduce to you today, which you're familiar with because I know you all practice these, but I'm going to just give you a framework for it, are rituals. And rituals help us move our emotions and not get stuck in them. Christina talked about finding those emotions in your body, being aware of them, and then moving them with all the different processes and practices that both Christina and Deva have talked about. Always returning to the heart, going down to the belly, being aware of that vagus nerve and how it influences us. In the traditions I work in, we perceive that you intake and give out information through 3 energy eyes. One of your energy eyes is right here. Some might call it your 6th chakra or 3rd eye. Another energy eye is here, your heart. And your 3rd energy eye is your belly. So if you're looking around your body for some grief, where is it stored? Always check those energy eyes. Although I've worked with people who stored grief in their feet. So they can really hide in different places. So I'm going to read you a quote. And Christina, by the way, sent out handouts that go with each of the presentations right before we started today. So the information or this quote is on the handout that Christina sent you earlier. So, and it reads, when the usual scaffolding of our lives has been dismantled, when the comforting routines that sustain us have all but disappeared, then ritual and ceremony become vital nourishment, perhaps as never before. So rituals, I have found, are important. Living with loss and working with grief is the process of being really present to yourself. And you shared that. Nora, you shared that. You had to be present to yourself. You couldn't be the person you had been before. You had to be aware and have courage to step into that new person that you are. When we're in our grief, we reawaken connections with ourselves in different ways. It's sort of like that dysregulation that David talked about. We have to find new ways to connect with ourselves and who we are. And we also have to learn to connect with other people in a new way, but also with the natural world. You know, I loved it when Carol said, I didn't want to be at home. I wanted to be at work. And then I only wanted to be at home. I didn't want to go out. Well, that's your trying to rebuild those connections. So when we're cast into the depths of grief, we lose our sense of direction. We have no compass. Oftentimes we have no compass to walk through that maze. And oftentimes we have little support. And sometimes it's not because people aren't trying. It's just that the connection's not there, right? They don't know how to talk to you. You don't even know how to talk about it. So I'm inviting you today to develop your own personal energetic artistry of personal practices. And you've already experienced some of them and heard about some of them, right? So you can pick and choose. These practices will expand your potential to engage more fully in your journey of grief. And in doing so, you'll find the treasures that David White talked about, buried in the well of grief, those golden coins. You become wiser. I thought, David, that was beautiful. You learn how to hold your grief. It doesn't go away. And it can jump up at you. It can surprise you. So knowing or finding ways to hold your grief is really an important activity, if you so choose to do so. So what's a ritual? A ritual is an embodied symbolic act through which we render visible the invisible values, emotions, insights that are most essential to us. I'll read that again. A ritual is an embodied symbolic act through which we render visible the invisible values, emotions, and insights that are most essential to us. And of course, those values will change as we walk the labyrinth of grief. So, rituals require three things. And I would say if you walked away from my presentation and you needed to remember one thing or three things, this is it. Rituals require intention, attention, and repetition. Intention, attention, and repetition. So intention means you set a goal. So if I'm going to shake something off, which is a wonderful practice, what am I shaking off? What's my intention? So maybe I said something to my husband that was sort of rude because he came in here during this presentation and I go away. So my intention is forgive myself, let it go, let that regret go. So I really set an intention and I pay attention when I'm doing it. And then I use that shaking off practice again, because if you sort of build it into your repertoire, it really becomes stronger. It's that muscle David was talking about. It's a ritual muscle that you build. So you'll find that you'll like some practices and you're not interested in other practices. That's part of building that personal artistry of rituals. Rituals, research indicates, scientists have shown that rituals lower anxiety. You gain confidence by doing rituals. You increase your resilience and you alleviate grief. Now, that doesn't mean get rid of it. It means you move it. You move it. You dance with it. You recognize it. You give it space. So, in fact, the absence of ritual or ceremony leaves people more disconnected, confused, apprehensive, and alone in an ever more complex world. So we each have resources, powerful resources. We all practice rituals. We just need to focus and be aware of which rituals are resonant with us, which ones work, and again, build that muscle. So scientists and shamans agree that those who practice ceremonies and rituals better manage the stress of loss. So I'd like to open the mic. I'd like to hear what rituals you guys practice right now, because I know everybody has rituals, right? What do you do in the morning when you're having your tea? What do you do in the shower? What rituals do you practice? Anybody want to share? Christina, I know you have some.
You know, I'm very blessed to be a body worker because, and the energetic type of body work I do, because it is part of that. It's a part of a ritual for me, because the client comes in at 10 o'clock, you know, and it's like, now we are starting. I listen. I kind of take in that information. I put them on the table. I listen to the body. So it's just a beautiful, sacred thing. But in my own personal life, when you said, what do you do in the shower? I thought, sometimes I do a very intentional away, you know, sloughing off all the yuck and watching it go down the drain. I'll use a dry brush too to help my immune system, but with the intention attached to that action, I can brush away stuff.
That's great.
And then I love just getting in the shower and turning on the cold water. You know, it's cold before it gets hot. So what are you going to do at that time? You're going to just waste that water, let that cold water go to waste? No, you're going to either put it on your arms because you're a body worker and they get tired, or you're going to just do full body thing. And as the cold water first hits your body, you go, oh, this is cold. Yes, it is cold. I love the cold water and it makes me feel bold. For
That's
example.
wonderful. So you got that vagus nerve going too.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. I mean, if you wake up kind of feeling icky, there's nothing like singing in the shower.
Oh, yeah, singing in the shower is a great one. And when I get really stuck in my grief, I set an intention to sing a song in the shower in the morning to set the mood of the day. It often deals with sunshine, like "Good morning, sunshine," or "Oh, what a beautiful morning." So it really sets my intention for the day. So that's a ritual. What other rituals do you guys practice? I know you do them. I know. Yeah, Deva.
I think my favorite one is meditating most every day. And I noticed in the last couple of weeks I got very busy and I wasn't doing my afternoon meditation, and I could feel the fatigue because that practice of the meditation renews me. I also have a practice that's developed during the pandemic that my daughters and I engage in. We Marco Polo each other every day, once a day. And that's become a ritual that I can rest into.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. How about the rest of you? You got a ritual you want to share? Something really kinky?
Not
What works? John?
Yeah, I don't have a ritual that I'm actually practicing regularly now, for mainly because recovering from several surgeries and whatnot, it's hard for me to sit on a cushion. But I've meditated for just over 50 years now, and I grew up Roman Catholic in the Latin Mass, so ritual is really comfortable for me. I light a candle, I light incense. I don't like any electronics on, so I turn the lights off, and I do my meditation. I ring a bell, it's all very formal, getting into being ready to meditate. And I when my kids were little, I used to do that at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning so that I wouldn't be interrupted.
Yeah, well, I think meditation's such a wonderful ritual. And I'm so glad you found different ways to do it now. So, yeah. Any others? Yeah, Corinne?
I do some of energy medicine and meditation when I hide in our tiny closet. But when I think about ritual, I was like, oh yeah, my tarot practice, which is just like for friends and family and myself, it's like a contemplative time for me to reflect. And when I first got my cards, my husband wrapped them up in a beautiful cloth, and you have your space cleared. And so now whenever I do tarot, I set up the space and it's nice and clean, and I have a beautiful cloth, and it just makes it like I come into that moment just prepared to reflect, and that's always helpful for me.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And both you and John talked about coming into the practice, and Christina did too. You enter into the practice, and then I presume you exit out of the practice. So there's you've got a ritual that opens it up and closes it down. And that's really important to do, because opening that sacred space for yourself and then closing it with intention really can up the amps of that ritual. So I love that you guys are expressing that. Any more rituals? Yeah, Carol?
This is not a ritual, but just something that has come to mind as I've been searching my days for rituals, that rituals are different from habits.
Oh yes.
What I have are habits. So I think it's helpful. It's really helpful. It has been helpful for me to think about the differences between them.
Yeah, and brushing your teeth is a habit. Taking a shower is a habit. But when you put intention and attention to it, that's when you're stepping up into a ritual.
Mhm.
And you don't want to do that with all your habits. You never get anything done during the day, so you want to pick and choose those things that work for you.
Mhm.
Is it a morning thing? An evening thing that a lot of people do is a gratitude practice at the end of the day. What am I grateful for today before I go into dream time? So you put the intention there, you pay attention because you tell yourself what you're grateful for, and then you say, thank you. So you look at your habits and decide which ones can you give a little more attention to. So I'm going to walk you through a ritual right now called the Well of Grief. You've got your stones. Everybody got something? Stones? Okay. So my Well of Grief is back here. And by the way, on the handout I sent you, there's a link to my website, and we're giving away the Well of Grief ritual. You can download it. This is a book of it. So when we go through this ritual, know that you have access to this ritual, and you can use it. You can share it with your friends, whatever. Okay? So don't worry about as we go through it that you have to remember anything. Right? Okay. So this is my Well of Grief. It's already been used a little bit this morning. And I got my stones. I have a few more than 3, but for this ritual, we only need 3. So I'm going to get my 3 stones out here. So I want you to take a look at your stones. You've got 3 of them. Look at them. Who are they? Hello, stones. What are you doing here? And I want you to pick a lodestone. Lode, lodestone. It's magnetic, so one of these stones will draw you to it. So, have you picked your lodestone? Okay, let's put your lodestone. I'm going to use this one. Let's put the lodestone in your left hand, okay? So we're going to use the breath. Your in-breath, you breathe in the essence of life, right? And your out-breath, you're releasing things that you no longer need anymore. So right now, I want you to focus your attention on the area of your heart. And breathe in and out of your heart. A little slower. And a little deeper than usual. Just breathe in and out of your heart. And while you're breathing, I'm going to call in elements from the natural world to support us in this ritual. I call on the mountains to share their wisdom. I call on the rivers to show us the sweetest flow. I call on the trees to breathe with us so that we may remember we're connected to all of life. I call on the animals to share their beauty. I call on the earth herself to share her strength. And I call on the stars above to light our way. Aho. So you have your lodestone in your left hand. I want you to pick up a second stone and put it in your right hand. So now you've got 2 stones. And I want you to think of a regret you have. Now, a regret is a feeling that you wish things had happened differently. Either an action you took you wish you didn't take, or an action you didn't take and you wish you had. So just think of a regret. It can be a little bitty regret, or it can be a great big regret. And let that regret bubble up in your body. It's okay. We all have them. You might say to yourself, I wish it had been different. So notice where that regret resides in your body. Where is the tingling or the heaviness? So send your breath to that area of your body now. Breathing all around that regret. And when you're ready, blow that regret into the stone in your right hand. Let the stone hold that regret for you. So now I want you to think of a lesson that you learned from that regret. Did you become more compassionate, more independent, more honest? Did you become wiser because of that regret? Think of a lesson that came along with that regret. And now locate that lesson, that gift. Where does it reside in your body? Go looking for it. And when you find it, breathe into that area of your body, allowing that lesson to expand. That lesson is like a diamond. It's the way in which you loved yourself. You've owned this gift for many years. And when you're ready, blow this gift into the lodestone in your left hand and let it hold it for you. And when you're ready, take the stone in your right hand and drop it into the water, into the vessel. Holding your lodestone in your left hand, pick up your third stone. Take a moment to return to your heart breath, breathing in and out of your heart. A little slower and a little deeper than usual. Recognize that grief lives within each of us. Our grief connects us to the ones we have lost. Allow your grief to surface now, in this moment. Feel your grief. Where does it reside in your body? When you find it, give it breath. Breathe into that area in your body. Honor your grief with your attention and your breath. And when you're ready, blow your grief into the stone in your right hand. And just allow that stone to hold it for you. And take a moment now and feel the grief in this Zoom room. Feel the connection of all of us as we allow our grief to surface. Just take a moment and feel how it feels to be present in this room together. So now take your stone in your right hand and drop it into the well of grief. Now I want you to visualize something that brings you joy. It can be a place, a person, an animal. Visualize something that brings you joy. Listen for its voice. Hear it. Smile. Step into your joy. Be aware of how joy resides in your body. How does it feel? Give it your breath. And when you're ready, share your joy with your lodestone in your left hand by blowing it and sharing it with the stone. Now bring your lodestone to your chest, to that energy eye of your heart, and breathe in and out of your heart into that stone, and then breathe it back. Inhale it in and breathe it out. Share your breath with the stone. And as you breathe, know that our hearts are connected in grief and joy. And while you continue your heart breath, I thank the mountains for sharing their wisdom. I thank the rivers for showing us the flow of our sweetest journey. I thank the trees for breathing with us and reminding us we're connected to all of life. I thank the animals for their beauty. I thank the earth for her strength. And I thank the stars for lighting our way. Aho. This ends this ritual. But what do you do with the lodestone? You can place it on your altar. You can place it on your kitchen counter so that if you have a delight or a joy, you can share it with the lodestone. If you have a regret or a grief, allow it to move by going and getting another stone, honoring the grief and the regret, blowing it into the stone and dropping it into your well of grief. I keep my lodestone on my ancestor altar, which is right behind me, because my ancestors have lots of wisdom to share with me. So, are there any questions? Oh, the water. What do you do with the water? So, usually on Sundays, I pour the water in my well of grief out on the earth, and I let the stone stay out in the sunshine or overnight in the moonlight or the starlight. And then I gather up the stones, I clean the vessel, fill it with new water, and start over again. It's a ritual. Are there questions? Any questions about the well of grief? Again, just look at the handout. There's a link to the website. It's there. You can download it. You can share it with your friends. No big deal. And it says you can't print it anyway. So it's our gift. Another topic I just want to touch on today is Ubuntu. U-B-U-N-T-U. Christina, would you put that in the chat, please? Ubuntu. It's a philosophy that was developed in South Africa. And the phrase that goes with Ubuntu is, I am because we are. I am because we are. You know, in our Western culture, we're told, suck it up. You'll get over it. As David said, you know, pull it together. Aren't you done with that grief? Really? I mean, it's been a year. Huh. Why aren't you over that? We're expected to be tough individuals. We're supposed to succeed at our challenges. And if we don't, it's because we didn't try hard enough. That's our culture. That's pretty tough. So in Africa, many of the tribal traditions use Ubuntu, and it means I am because we are. If I have a success, it's your success. If you have a success, it's mine. If you have a grief, it's mine. If I have a grief, it's yours. That we need to build containers for our grief. We need to build connections for our grief. We need communities that can help us process our grief. It's not easy in this culture because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. But you saw today the presenters, we speak about our grief. We speak our stories. We let it be known. And if you speak your stories, it gives other people permission to speak theirs. Ubuntu. Grief needs to be shared in community. And the wisdom keepers in Africa know this. There are many, many, many types of communal rituals that are practiced in Africa. So I'd like to just open the mic a little bit right now, because when I first came across Ubuntu, I was like, huh, who are those people out there in the world that I can really say I am because we are? Who are those people for me? So open your mics and let's share. Who are these people to you? What does it mean, I am because we are, to you? Anybody got a notion how you would answer that? Of course, the first thing I thought, I am because my husband and I, we are. We're in this together, this dance. Who do you connect with? Carol, you unmuted. Do you want to share?
I would say my family, I won't extended family, but my siblings, their children, and their children's children. When you were asking us to think of a something that brought us joy, the picture that came to my mind was the Zoom screen with all of them. So I think that they are my people.
They're my people. That's perfect. Thank you, Carol. What other kinds of connections? Yeah, Christina?
Originally, I thought I am because my mother and father made me, and which is true. And then I kind of expanded on that idea, and when Carol said she was talking about the joyful thing that she was thinking about, I thought about my son, who is just a joy. He's annoying and he's a joy. And I thought about how, even though I'm the ripe old age of 56, I'm still learning, I'm still changing, I'm still growing. I absorb wisdom from my father who lives with us, my mother who visits every now and then, my brother who came to me in a dream, and my little tiny son who's 6 feet tall and almost 22, and every now and then he'll come up with a piece of wisdom, like row your own boat, Mom. Which is true. It's a good thing for me to hear. And so I am because Harry is.
That's great. Anyone else want to share? Yeah, Nora?
I think this might apply. I was just on a 10-day trip with my father, who's 94, who will be passing one day, and my two sisters and a brother-in-law. And my father had this deep sadness to see me so sad after losing my son. And I knew it was painful for him to see me cry. And sometimes I said, Dad, it's crying with joy. I loved him so much, and to know that much love is such a treasure. And so now I bring my son up in all kinds of conversations. And I explained to them at breakfast the other day, because I know my dad's uncomfortable because he'll be gone and he doesn't want us sad. And I said, well, mom came to in my dreams last night, and oh my God, she was so funny. And or something will come up about mechanics, that my son was a mechanic, and I'll say, oh, do you remember how crazy he was about that Ducati motorcycle he had? Oh my God, I was so scared. He could drive it fast, and yet he died died in his home. You know, he could have died in so many ways. To talk about him as if he is still with us. I said, love never dies. And Dad, you will be talked about. And I hope you show up and talk back, because I know even though we can't see you, you've got to be there, because you're in my heart. And so now I can bring my son up. So now they become my people that I can talk to freely, because they knew my son, and they know how deeply I loved him. My daughter has a hard time with it still, but hopefully we can talk about him as if he is and was and will be always with us. They're my people.
They're your people. Yeah. Yeah. Courage to be me. That's so important, Nora. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So we have jobs to do. We have jobs to grieve ourselves. We can build resilience with practices and rituals, and then we can really let people see us. Have the courage to be me. So just before we sign off, I'd like you, and even those that are invisible, reach your hands out and hold each other in the Zoom room. And we can call it moaning or humming, but recognize your grief and our grief as a community. Let's just moan together. Realize that our culture, the world right now, needs to moan. Things are changing. We are not who we were 2 years ago. The world is not the world it was 2 years ago. We have to change. We have to grieve. We have to move on. So go find your Ubuntu. Let them hold you. It's been wonderful being here together today. I thank you for helping me move my grief. Aho.
Oh, thank you, Kitty. I have to share a little silly thing. When you said the word Ubuntu, I'm an IT professional, and Ubuntu is a version of a free Linux operating system.
Yeah, I know.
So that's what popped into my head.
Well, maybe that Linux system will bring people together somehow. Looks like Delin has a question or a thing to say.
That's really weird because I didn't touch it. Has it been up there for a while? Maybe Charlie did it. I don't know.
It's magic.
Maybe I need to say something. I don't have a specific person because the grief is not that fresh. But I talked with my aunt yesterday and she said my ex-stepdaughter had contacted her. And this morning my guts were just in knots because of that, because it was not a good situation. And I just needed to grieve the loss of that family. I don't know that I ever really did, even though it wasn't good. Towards the end, it was still a loss, and I don't think I ever grieved the loss of that family. And I also, my mother showed up, and also my dad, who is still living. I already grieve for him now, because I know he won't be here forever. And I cherish each and every moment and every conversation and every thought that I ever have with him or about him.
I think that Delin is bringing up anticipatory grief, which is something that happens all the time if you're mindful, if you're mindful of your own emotional state. Sometimes I think, what am I going to do when Paul dies, my husband? But I'm reassured by Paul that he will outlive me, and I'm the one who's going to go first. But still, what's wonderful about that, Delin, what I see you doing, or what you tell me you're doing, is similar to what I experienced before my mom died. We had all that time. We had a lot of grief to think about what's it going to be like when mom's gone. But there she was still there. And so it gave me a unique opportunity. It's only unique because I actually chose it. We have this opportunity all the time with people who we don't think are going to die soon. We have that opportunity to say, wow, look at this beautiful person. I have the honor and joy to meet simply, or to get to know, or to deepen my knowledge of. And that's really, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to be with a person and really see them and hear them and communicate. So thank you, Delin, for sharing that.
I also heard something too, perhaps a little different. We choose who we grieve for. There's a natural response. And so if we have experienced difficult relationships growing up in a dysfunctional home or in a primary relationship, even though we might have mixed feelings about that person or that family, when it ends, we may grieve, and we have the right to do that. It does not diminish our previous experience.
Yeah, I think sometimes we grieve the loss of hope
Mhm.
because there were expectations and hopefulness in any new adventure or new connection or new family, and then we grieve for that loss of hope.
And with grief, we grieve our old self.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
David, would you comment a little bit more about what you mean by we choose who we grieve for? Or maybe I misunderstood you, but
Sure. Maybe choose is not the best word. Maybe we grieve from such a deep place that it may surprise us for whom we grieve. I have known people who their mate died and their grief process was very different from mine when Karen died. And we might, as a society, have judgment about don't grieve the person who assaulted or abused you. But we don't get to choose that for someone else. Is that clear?
Kitty, would you say what you said just before John asked his question? I think there was something there and I didn't quite hear it. For me.
Oh, I was talking about we grieve the loss of hope.
That's it. I still grieve the loss of hope from that marriage and those relationships because
you were there, you were attached.
It could have been different. Not that I would want it to be different because I love where I am now. But it's still painful situations still pop into my mind, and that anger from some of those things that happened or didn't happen as I would have liked to have been and at that time. It still just pops in unexpectedly a lot. Not as much as it used to because it's been several years, but that's a good way to put it.
Linda, did you want to share? You're muted. You're muted. You've got your hand up?
She said she's trying.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
We can hear you now.
Sorry, yeah, I have a new tablet that I'm breaking in today, and things aren't located in the same place they were on my old tablet. So sorry about the delay. Oh, and I think about grief kind of spills over into the whole Buddhist thing about attachments. And when you're talking about what you choose to grieve or don't choose to grieve, if anyone wants to jump in, I know not everyone's coming from a Buddhist perspective, but sometimes you find yourself grieving over an attachment to something that really it's not that consequential, but you feel sad because you allowed yourself to attach to that thing. It's almost humorous at times, the things that you can grieve over. It's like, it really wasn't that important, but somehow I gave it significance. So I don't know, John, if you have some perspective on that or anyone else.
I can tell you that I grieved over the loss of being in person with you all. And I told Kitty and Deva, I don't like this. No. Ugh. Well, they weren't privy to all the stuff I was going through in front of my computer at 10 p.m. last night. But that's how I felt.
Oh, I think we were.
Yeah. You didn't get it full throttle.
Right there with you, Christina.
Yeah. Yeah. So change. I was grieving that change. Yeah. I'll
I
just leave
love
it.
the way you put that, Linda, because first of all, attaching, and this might sound weird, and I don't know if it fits, but attaching grief to inconsequential things is probably a mechanism for ignoring consequential things. But I am clearly capable of doing that. And then Christina tossed in the big word change. One of the things that is absolutely ridiculous to attach grief to is the fact that things change. Because if we accept the reality of the world in which we exist, everything changes, nothing's the same. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's like, oh, come on, guys. We talk about this every time we have a service, you know, that's one of the words I use every time. But I still find myself in that place. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think a piece of the attachment is, as humans, we are to attach with each other, with animals, with nature. And the struggle I have is the attachment to the outcome. So I will rebel against someone's death, and I'm attached to them still being alive. And that just adds another layer of pain to my process. Given that we have been focusing on loss and pain, I'm wondering if there's some way in this moment to also acknowledge the grace that comes with grief, if we're open to it. The opportunity to recognize how we are changed and how our world has changed. And also that piece of the relationship doesn't end and there's some grace in that. I find grace to be a place of respite.
I'd like to share something with you, and it may have been a vision that I had after my son died, but I was called to go lay down on my bed and be quiet. And I meditate, and I also no, it wasn't meditation, it wasn't a dream, but I had a vision. I was on a road, and my son and another bike rider were walking out of a deep green, dark green forest onto the road with their bikes. And my son was a biker. And they turned their bikes away from me and stayed there for maybe, I don't know, maybe a minute or more. And I had no feelings about what I was watching. I just was watching. And I had this immense sense of peace that I've never experienced, I never even thought existed. And then they took off in unison over the hill, down over the hill, up the hill, and down. And that sense of peace continues to be with me, knowing that there is ultimate peace and ultimate love and no wanting. And that's what I lean on when I'm feeling sorry for myself that I've lost him, that I've lost seeing the rest of his life, maybe grandchildren, all the hopes that I had. I've lost that. And my faith is that there's got to be something bigger than this, that I had a twinkling of that peace, that it was a gift. There's no other way to explain it. We have all these expectations about things, and often they lead to resentments because life is not as perfect as we want it to be. But I think that's the human condition. There's something much bigger. I was telling my dad, if we don't know what's going on inside of our body, and it's so magical, and here we are in this space, and everything is really, I'm curious about things happening. I said, who's to say there's nothing beyond this? And he does not believe there's anything beyond it. But I wanted him to know that I've felt that peace. That was just a twinkling, just a gift. And that's what I have to lean on, that there's much more than this.
It's beautiful. I'll share that the day after Karen died, I got a call from a woman in California who said that she had worked with Karen and that Karen just contacted her. And she had a message for me. And this woman asked Karen, what is it like to be dead? And Karen's answer resonates every day with me: unencumbered.
No wanting.
I'm interested in, yes, we have time. I'm interested in discussing just a little bit the parallels between losing a person in our lives and the depth of that experience with the smaller losses, loss of job, loss of community, loss of identity. You know, I'm a massage therapist. No, you're not. You don't have any clients, for example. So I'm just wondering if anybody, either presenters or people attending this workshop, if anybody has an insight about that. You know, we're talking about loss of people who are dear to us, and yet there are things that are dear to us that we can lose, and which have a similar bite, I would say. So
I can really relate to that, Christina. I found out a couple of years ago that my lower back is basically, I guess I can't say destroyed, but it doesn't work anymore. So I've lost so many activities that they were the center of my life. I was a naturalist. I was a hiker. I really grieve those things. And I grieve for the relationships that I no longer have that were related to those things.
I have a couple of thoughts. One is, I think most losses circle back to our sense of identity. And we like knowing who we are, and yet each loss brings change. The other is, I think it's really important not to grade our griefs or compare one to another. They're each a sacred experience, whether that's the loss of a job, the loss of health, the loss of a person, the loss of a pet, the loss of a home, bankruptcy. All of those are potentially life-changing.
So I did a little experiment not too long ago. I sat in meditation and I, one by one, stripped away in my mind the things that I considered important. So I said, well, I'm a healer. I'm a good healer. And I said, no, you're not. Just took it away. I can use my body. I can walk around and I can jump and run. No, you can't. Well, I'm in a wheelchair. Okay, but I can do long distance healing. Yes, I can do that. No, you can't. It was interesting. It was safe because I knew it wasn't true yet. That any one of those things might be true sometime. And then I got to the nubbins. I got to the core, the little nugget that remains unalterable. And at the time I said, I'm a child of God. And I couldn't take that away. So I think that that joyful place, you can inhabit that joyful place, and you will be clothed in grief, and yet the golden nugget of light, that is still there. And I believe I know everybody has that. It's whether you know what it is and have met it. That was a really pivotal point in my life when I did that little exercise. And I come back to it when stuff gets tough. I say, you know what? I'm a child of God. Nah, nah, nah.
I have just sort of an open question. Does anyone have any experience or any knowledge about what I'm going to call transference grief, which is a word or a phrase I just made up? But recently, our long-term dog of 15 years passed, and I grieved more for Shiloh than I did the loss of my parents, the loss of my siblings. Now, I spent a lot of my life like this, closed up and not acknowledging feelings. And there's a level at which I really feel like how hard I grieve for Shiloh was releasing all kinds of grief that I hadn't acknowledged before.
I think that's certainly true, John. And I also think that it's important to remember our well-being is regulated by those we are near, including humans and animals. And so I know when my 15-year-old dog, I had to put her to sleep, I'd wake up in the morning ready to feed her. You know, it was a constant moment by moment reminder. Whereas in an 8-month period, my mother died, 2 grandmothers died. I went through a breakup. I went through loss of a home and a move. And all those hurt. But the death of Machen was right there all the time for a while.
I have a comment about that, John, and at least it kind of resonates with me. Maybe it will with some of you. Because that was the one thing I didn't mention. I had a dog that I grieved deeply, deeply for, just like you're talking about. And I think maybe it's related to our animals. We don't have the baggage that we do with the people and the people's relationships that we had. No matter what the people relationship was, the animal, at least a dog, I've never owned cats, so I don't know how that feels. But with the dog, all you've ever had from them is love. You don't have the baggage of the disappointments and the anger and all of that. You don't have all of that baggage with an animal. And I think that when you have only the love to grieve, like you said, it transfers back to the people that you had that baggage with, and somehow it's easier and harder at the same time to grieve for the loss of an animal when it's only the love that you're grieving. At least for me.
Can I ask a crazy question of everyone who has grieved? How does it feel when someone says, I am sorry for your loss? John says, Nora says.
You know, Dave, when I have people say that to me, I say, I'm sorry for your loss too.
There's a kind of caretaking that might happen. Do you think, Kitty, when someone says, I'm sorry for your loss?
What people say is basically they don't have anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid of being in the situation. So phrases like, I'm sorry for your loss, or maybe it was time, or Deva, you said, oh, maybe it's for a reason. There must be a reason. These are all like spiritual bypasses. It's a way you say, that's your loss. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to turn away here now and go this way. It's a bypass. They just took the exit ramp, which is okay because they really just don't have the skills. Our culture doesn't teach the skills. So I try to be patient when people takes the bypass, but that particular one, I do have a response.
Well, thank you. I asked for a selfish reason to try to figure out what to say to someone. And my inclination in this moment is to say, my heart goes out to you.
Well, that's sort of the same thing. I'm saying, I'm sorry. I take a breath so that I'm not persecuting them. I don't get on the triangle.
Right.
And it's like, I take a breath, and with my heart, I say, and I'm so sorry for your loss too. And it confuses them. But it's sort of like, and we just stand in silence for a while being confused, and that's okay.
Sarah had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, hi, everybody. Here's me. Thank you all for sharing so far. This has been amazing. What I was gonna say, I mean, I think it's somebody else said, you know, it's like, there's almost nothing that you can say, you know, it's a situation where there are no words. I don't have words that are gonna take your pain away. But I think that, Kitty, I saw you do something that I do a lot, and I've worked with a lot of cross-cultural situations where touching isn't necessarily warranted or welcome. And I think just putting your hand on your chest is always my go-to in a situation where I don't know if touching is appropriate, or I don't want it, or I know that they don't want it, or whatever, as a greeting, or especially when language isn't there between you. But you don't even need to, that's the thing, like you don't need to. Here's an example, okay. I was at the Boulder Hand Weavers Guild sale a few weeks ago. And I was fortunate to meet some amazing artists. And one of them was a 94-year-old Japanese woman. And she and I started talking. I worked in Japan for a couple of years, and it worked its way deep into my heart. And I could tell by her art that she had lots of Japanese influences. So we started talking, and she in a very un-Japanese way, she shared a really personal thing with me within like 5 minutes of knowing each other. And that was that her ancestral family home had just been lost in Japan. She said, to Mother Nature. And she said that 2 of her siblings died in that disaster. So I'm assuming they were also in their 90s or thereabouts. So you can imagine they lived through, I mean,
the war.
You know what happened in history. I'm not going to give you a history lesson because you know it already, but gosh, you know, and what do you say? And I just like, especially in Japanese culture, you don't talk about your feelings, especially not with a stranger. You don't show your sadness. You don't be vulnerable. And it was just this weird moment. And she told me that, and I was just like, kind of like you guys said, almost just taking a moment of silence, not even on purpose, but just like that moment of like, damn, you know, like, oh, you know, like whatever that reaction or noise or just physicality is, the other person can see that, you know, like if you're being empathetic, you don't need the right words. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I was thinking about that kind of as part of that conversation, you know, like I've had so many clients tell me, you know, they've fled a war zone and they watched their husband get like burned to death in a stack of tires or like whatever. I mean, trauma. And how do you respond? It's that same question from Deva, you know, like maybe you cry for them. Maybe you just stop what you're doing and put your pen down. Whatever, you know, the reaction is going to be different depending on your level of how okay you are that day, or what your previous client just told you, or what your kid is going through, or whatever, you know. But yeah, I figured I should probably jump in and say something because I've been quiet for a long time. And usually I'm not the quiet type. So hopefully I'll get to know all you guys. I just moved to Longmont in the last year, so I'll be around.
Sarah, that's wise. Go ahead, Deva.
I was just going to say, that's so very helpful. Thank you for that. And when you went, I was reminded that the origin of the word compassion in Greek is split open gut. Thank you.
And I noticed that you used a curse word. Hey, damn. I use a lot worse sometimes. You know, touching your heart, taking a moment, being authentic. If they're telling you this, they're trying to connect, and just find that authentic. Like you said, it doesn't have to be words. It can just be tears. And they know they've been heard and felt. But just doing this is wonderful.
And when you are ready to talk, it's really nice to know who will listen.
Mm-hmm.
And who's not afraid of you, who's not afraid, and they will just sit and listen. And we have to talk it out, or it just congests us so much. And you're scared when you're grieving to talk to somebody about it, because you don't want to bring them down, or you don't want to cause them problems. So if somebody, and my friends did come to me and say, when you're ready, I'm here for you. I'll just listen.
I find the most challenging situation for me is suicides. When I'm working with a parent whose child has committed suicide, there's nothing to say. There's nowhere to go. It's heart-wrenching. And you just have to be your authentic self. You just have to be present in the pain and let the pain enter you. I am because we are.
So we are at 12:52 right now. And I had originally thought that we would do some singing bowls to kind of wrap things up and create a way to say goodbye and thank you. But I kind of doubt the ability of the singing bowls to come through over Zoom. And so I pulled out Hester, my harp. Dave is like, hi, Hester. So I'd like to end with Hester, the harp, just improvisational harpy stuff. But before we do that, if there's any last little tidbit, I want to thank everybody who has attended, and I'm glad it worked out. Thank you to Kitty and Deva for working with me over the months of preparing this.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending and presenting. I have a little additional thing that I want to toss out. If you are in a situation where you're an empath, where you are the person who listens and takes in other people's grief, it's really important that you have a resource that allows you to work that out and get that out of yourself. I just wanted to toss that in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. I just want to say thank you again to everybody. I'm a teacher and among other things, so I understand what it's like to put together a thoughtful presentation, and I can tell that you guys have brought a lot to it. And for all the participants, I mean, I feel like I've been so enriched by all of you, so thank you so much. And I'm just looking around at everybody's faces and names one more time. Yeah, it's been awesome. And a shout out to Corinne, who is in the room and who I just met. I was selling art at an event and we just connected for like half a second, and she grabbed my card and I was like, hit me up, and she's like, there's this event, and then she emailed and followed up and sent me the link, and so here I am. So thank you, Corinne. That was awesome.
Thank you, John, for mentioning empath. I didn't share it, but I teach classes for highly sensitive people, many of whom are empaths, and that's 18 to 20% of our population that often feel as though there's something wrong with them, and it's a gift. So if anyone's interested in more information, let me know. I have lots of information.
Hey, Deva, that sounds like my oldest kid, like to a T. Do you work, they're 9. Do you work with children?
I work with parents. There's an amazing book, though. I think it's called How to Raise a Sensitive Child.
Okay. Thanks.
So I received a request about if you want to donate, make a donation if you haven't already or didn't know how or whatever, and we didn't meet in person, so you couldn't bring your checkbook. I'm putting in my email address, if I can do it correctly. It's hard when your eyeballs get older. Soundheals@earthlink.net is my email address. And you can go to PayPal and find Christina Hildebrandt on PayPal through my email, or maybe through my name. And yeah, and you can, throw some money at us if you want. The money that you donate will go to Kitty's Foundation and Davis Foundation. And I might take $5 and go get a chai or something. And maybe the Longmont Buddhist Temple will get some too. We just don't know. But we appreciate the donations. That's not why we did this. We did it so that we could spend time with you and offer grief help for folks, because we all are needing it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, if we were paying you guys fairly for your time, this would be a very expensive 4-hour-long workshop. So yeah.
Well, if you'd like to donate, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, it's okay.
You're talking to an artist.
Oh, talking to an artist. Oh, okay. Yeah. $2.
And a teacher.
I'm making art right now. Can't you see this?
Nice. Yes. So if it's okay with everybody, if we're ready to wrap, please mute yourselves, and Hester and I will stay unmuted, and we're just going to play for a few minutes, and then we'll say goodbye. And I have no idea what Hester has in mind. Nora, thank you. Let's see. Paul's going to get it right in his face here. She may be a little out of tune because I just pulled her out. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody, for being here. As John would say, hands in gasho, we support each other, we come together. And it is with great joy that I say thank you again and send you off into this beautiful December day.
Bye.
Hi, Louis.